There is comfort in repetitive movement. A yogi would say, I am practicing yoga. Perfection is never the goal. The process and what we learn about ourselves along the way is what matters. Stitching is like that. We carefully select our fabric, choose just the right floss, and we gather our tools, the scissors and needles. Then we take a seat in our favorite chair and begin to stitch. The needle goes into the fabric and comes back out. It goes in and comes back out. Stitch by stitch, we make beauty and find comfort as we stitch. So let's say hi to your FlossTube friends, Archie. Want to say hi? Now, come on, say hi, FlossTube friends. There he is. That's Archie. I'm Jackie. Welcome to another episode of Comfort Stitching. What's that fuzz right there? Fuzz in his beard. For those of you who have terriers, beards, skirts, the type of grooming that terriers have, they're mops. They pick up things that we'd prefer they didn't. So the joys of a terrier. But oh man, that's Archie. I'm Jackie. Welcome to Comfort Stitching. This is my channel all about cross stitching and some of the other things that I get up to. This is Saturday, July 12th, 2025. And there is the train going through town, which you probably will hear as we go along today. I live in a small town in northwest Missouri called Weston, and there's a train that routinely goes through town, even through at night. You just get used to it. And it's a beautiful day here today, actually. It's just a little bit cloudy. In the mid to upper 80s, we have been having a string of really hot days, like I know a lot of places in the United States are, and it's summer, so it's humid. But how did we get to the middle of July already? It's the middle of the year. Where does the time go? It's just amazing. Anyway, weather report. I think we all have to do that. My family always did weather, talked about weather. I think it just gives context to where you are and what you're experiencing, which leads me to just, my heart goes out to the people of Texas and other areas of the country who have been experiencing this severe flooding. It's just tragic, and sending thoughts and prayers is what I can do. Sending good energy is important at any time, but there's just a lot of tragedy right now, and my heart goes out to all of you who are affected by whatever it is you're going through. It's a challenging time to be in our world, and we do what we can do to get through a day. And you know, sitting here in my comfortable apartment, looking out in a world that is beautiful right in my immediate surroundings, seems a little shallow to be talking about stitching when so much is going on in the world. But I can tell you that talking about this is really important for a number of reasons. And I have been reading a book and some articles and listening to a woman talk about the psychology of craft, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about towards the end of the video today. And I just realized through listening to the psychology of what happens with us physically and mentally by doing our crafts, and particularly for us stitching, right? How much that's leading to our own peace of mind, which then allows us to be able to put that out in the world. So while stitching might seem a little trivial when there's so much going on in the world, it's really important to our well-being. So we're going to talk about some stitching today, what I've been working on since I saw you last, and some things that I have received in the mail, a bit of happy mail, stitchy kindness, I'll say, and a few things to add to my supply library, both charts and floss and linen, all of the things. And so I hope you'll stick around and listen to what I have to say. I hope I'll bring some light into your world today, especially if you're having a rough time. So I want to thank you guys for the kind comments over the last 2 videos especially. Always I appreciate your input. But over the last 2 videos, I was doing a Q&A. There was a part 1 and 2 in episodes 16 and 17. And I've really enjoyed your feedback on those, what you found interesting about them, what you chose to continue to ask me about. If you ever have questions, feel free to ask. I probably will answer. So, but I did have, with that in mind, I did have someone ask me to see something that I briefly mentioned in episode 16 when I was in the Q&A and I was talking about my work with an artist named Mare Engelbreit and some of the things that I did when I worked for her. And I mentioned that I did some drawings for a cookie jar. And this was when I was still at Hallmark. That's where I met Mary and started working with her. And I did these drawings for a cookie jar. And the person wrote in saying, please show that cookie jar. I might have the same one because I've got a Mare Engelbreit cookie jar that I just love. And so she wanted to see my cookie jar. So we're going to start out with a cookie jar today. I've got her right here. This is the cookie jar. She's a little bit worse for the wear. There's some chips and cracks on her because I've had this, I did the drawings for, it's based on an illustration that Mary did for Hallmark. It was an illustration, I think I looked it up, called The Garden of Friends. I'm going to pop an image of it up here because I found one on the internet. And there was a little bench sitting in front of those girls that had a cookie jar sitting on it. And this was her. So this was Mary's original design. And then I did pencil drawings to be able to give to somebody to sculpt this. So it is now a cookie jar for Archie's cookies, his daily treats. In fact, he's down here looking at me like, hey, I know you have that treat jar. I need one. So anyway, this is the cookie jar. If you have it, it's from the early 90s because that's when I was working for Mary. I'm going to give him a treat. He's being so polite. If you have it, cool. There aren't many of them that still exist in the world, but this one has been on my life journey with me for a long time. So this is the cookie jar. I'm going to put her down, keep her safe. Leave it. Archie is very interested in that cookie jar. He knows what's in there. He's gotten a treat out of that every day. He gets one after breakfast, so he knows what that jar means. So anyway, that's the cookie jar. So let's move on to the stitching. What have I been stitching? Well, I have a new start. New start. For those of you counting, my friend Faith always likes to know what I'm doing. Today I'm showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. And I have several kitted up. So Faith, I'm working on 5 WIPs right now. I used to say I was a monogamous stitcher. I mean, actually, I didn't know if I would be or not. Because when I started stitching back in the late 80s and 90s, you were a monogamous stitcher. That's what you did. You finished one thing till it was, you worked on it till it was done. Then you started something else. We didn't have social media then. We weren't constantly influenced and inspired by what we were seeing from other people like we are today. I think it was just the mindset. When you worked on something, you worked on it until it was done and then you were finished. So then you started something else. So when I came back to stitching a couple of years ago, I was still in that mindset. I hadn't been exposed to a lot of what everybody was doing. So the first thing I did took me nearly a year to do, and I worked on it from the beginning to the end before starting something else. And I wasn't sure if I was going to continue to be a monogamous stitcher or if I would want to do more things. And there are some things I'm working on that I could happily be monogamous about, but I also am working on some other things too that are equally engaging to me. And again, I can reference that Psychology of Craft book that I mentioned. It's good to have several things going on, I have now found. So I have justification for those of you who have lots and lots of WIPs. So it's good to have things going on. So with that said, let me show you what I started on. A few weeks ago, I showed you a piece of linen that I got from Roxy Flossco. It was this one called French Hen. And I got it for a specific chart that was a market release this year. It was this one by Shakespeare's Peddler. Try and get rid of the glare. And then I also got the companion chart to it. These are sampler fragments, they're called. This is the spring one, and the one I started is this one. And they call for a fabric from XJU Design called Dark Soil. I purchased a piece of that. I wasn't feeling it, and so I got this Roxy one, thinking it might be a good replacement, and it is, and I love this. The modeling on this piece is amazing. I decided to do a color and cotton floss conversion for this one. If you've been around here for a while, you know I love color and cotton floss, and I've been slowly collecting a good selection of them. So I've got quite a few to choose from. So I put together a mostly color and cotton conversion for this. And I still have, I'm using some of the DMCs. In a couple of cases, I wasn't able to find a good color and cotton replacement in my stash. So there will be a couple of occasions where I'm using the called for floss, but I mostly did a color and cotton conversion for this. So let me show you what I did. I'm working on 40 count linen, and I got a good bit of the border done. I was really keen to use this one corner of this linen because I particularly loved the modeling here. And I think it's going to show up well because that basket of berries goes right here in this section. So I think that brown will still show up when I put in the lettering. You can see there's some alphabets that go over the top. And I was looking at this chart the other night while I was working on it, and those alphabets are just full crosses, I think. Yes. They're just plain cross stitch. There's no specialty stitches or over one in this chart. But the way they're charted, they could easily be done as Smyrna crosses or eyelets. And again, if you've been around here for a while, you know I've got a project that I'm going to start working on with my friend Ray Niles that has eyelets in it. And so I think I'm going to do the letters in this in eyelets just to get myself a little more practice with the eyelets. But anyway, that's my start on this. Those strawberries are coming across really red on screen. They're actually a pink. It's a called for color is Antique Rose, which is kind of a rosy pink. And it looks a lot lighter here than Antique Rose is. But I chose a color and cotton color called Ferris Wheel, which is a pinky red. And I kind of darkened the color for these lighter strawberries too. They were almost ecru in the called for, and I just added a little more color to those. But anyway, that's my new start. I'm happy to be working on that. And as I said, this is 40 count linen. I'm using 1 floss strand over 2 linen threads. And I'm enjoying this one a lot, and especially enjoying working on this linen. And I have worked on one other dark linen color. It was a deep blue. I didn't have trouble seeing the holes on that, and I'm not having trouble seeing the holes on this. It's not as dark as the dark soil linen would have been, but I work in a hoop always, and I like really tight tension when I work, which will open the holes, and I'm not having trouble seeing the holes on this piece at all for those of you who might be concerned. And I would recommend this French hen color of linen as a good alternative to the called for dark soil for this one, if you're at all interested in doing those but weren't sure about a really dark color of linen. So that's my new start. Shakespeare's Peddler Summer Sampler Fragment. I'm going to move on now to just some things that I made some progress on since I saw you last. I will start by sharing a stitch along that I'm co-hosting, along with Sarah, Somi Sarah. We are working our way through a Barbara Anna design called the Four Seasons. And I've got a color copy here. These are the Four Seasons girls. We got to turn towards my window over here. It's sort of an overcast day, but the sun is coming in and out. Anyway, we started this at the beginning of, or at the end really of December last year at the winter solstice. We started with the winter girl. And then at the official beginning of spring, we did the spring girl. And then now that we've had the summer, the official beginning of summer, we're working on the summer girl. And we do have a name for our stitch along. It's called the BA Four Seasons Sal. And if you're on Instagram and want to share photos, we'd love to see them. I'm seeing a few. I love it, what y'all are sharing. Anyway, let me show you where I am. Last time we looked at this, I only had the head and the little V of her chest done. And since I've seen you last, I've added in all of the rest of that arbor going around her. And then there'll be some strawberries that get put in this area here, some dangling strawberries. That was a lot of fun to do. Am I changing any colors on this? Only one so far. I've changed her skin color, but I actually changed the color of the center of the flowers. It was supposed to be a bright yellow color that's used as an accent in her hair. And on this sort of yellowy fabric that I'm using, it wasn't showing up a lot, so I just used the darker color from her hair as the center of those strawberry blossoms in that arbor. This is also 40 count linen. It is a color called Mary's Sampler by Swan Bay Fabrics. They are a UK-based dyer. And I'm using, as I said, mostly called for colors on this. They're all DMC, beautiful, bright colors, love them. And these are the colors for all four of those girls on one ring. But 40 count linen, one floss thread over 2 linen threads. And I'm enjoying this one. I have no clue what I'm gonna do with these when I'm done. I just love Barbara Anna's design style, and they're happy and they make me smile to work on them. And I'm really enjoying working with these colors, and so I'm having fun with them. So even though Sarah and I started this stitch along all the way back in December, if you want to pick it up now and join us, just start. You don't have to stitch right along with us in the same thing we're doing. If you just want to join us, even with one of them. This is a downloadable chart from Barbara Anna's Ko-Fi shop, and I'll put a link to that in the show notes below. And you can download the PDF and join us. Information about the stitch along, I always put that in the show notes too. In fact, I don't know, some of you have commented that you weren't sure how to get to the show notes. If you're watching on a TV, you can't see them. But if you open up your phone or iPad to the YouTube app, below any video, there is a brief title to the video and a short description, and then you'll see the word more with 3 dots. If you tap on that, a whole world can open up to you with a description that the video content creator decided to put there. All sorts of information about the videos. I always like to include the titles of everything I'm working on. Maybe if I have something that you might want to know about or where I got it, I'll put that information there. And recently I decided, or I learned how to do chapters, so some of that information has to be put into those show notes. So there's lots down there, contact information as well. So if you want to learn more, go there. All right, what's next? I'm blowing through these. That's okay. I got lots to talk about today. Things, you never know what I'm gonna add. Next, I worked on, very briefly, I haven't shown you this one in a while. Very briefly, I worked on a red sampler, an alphabet sampler called Antoinette, 1894 to 1896. Here is Antoinette. This is from European Reproduction Samplers out of Germany. And I recently had somebody on social media say that she had received this. She was concerned about how the tariffs might impact her ability to get this. I cannot speak to that. I haven't researched what impact that might have if you're thinking about this one or wanted to get it. You would have to look into that. But this, like I said, is available from European Reproduction Samplers, and the information for their website will be in the description box below. I am working this one on 56 count fabric. This is my one and only project right now on 56 count. And let me show you, I've got thread that's moving, rolling. This one's with using spooled silk. I almost showed you the back. Last time I did, I'll show you the back. Last time somebody had asked me about seeing the back, so here's the back of Antoinette. You can see I'm carrying threads. Yep, okay, let me show you the front now. So I haven't shown you her a lot lately because I haven't really been working on her a lot lately. I've been into other things that I've got going. But here's Antoinette. And what I have just added in, you've seen most of this, but I got it out this week to work on one evening. And I got in the X, Y, and Z, and these 3 little letters there. And some of this border, I just had a length of thread in my needle and did that. So if you've been following along with my journey of Antoinette, I am using 103 silks by Soie. This is the number 664, by the way. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous red. But I have trouble with these tangling and creating knots on the back. And y'all have been really good about giving me hints for how I might alleviate the knotting issues. It's not working. I still have knots. And in fact, Audrey from Stitch Bead said she just deals with the knots. You just pull them out as you go along. But they frustrate me because I have to constantly be looking at the back. Do I have a knot? Do I have a knot? And untangling them. So I just have found myself a little more frustrated than I would like to be with Antoinette. So consequently, I haven't been picking it up as much. But I'll get back to her at some point. I'll just change my mind about it and or change my mindset about it, I guess I should say, and get back to her. As I said, this is 56 count linen. This is called Shrekie's Tan, and it's by Needle Bling Design. It's 1 silk thread over 2 linen threads. And I do enjoy the look of it. It's just not the most enjoyable stitch that I have. And we pick up the things, especially when we've got some challenges going on in our lives that are not going to be, I think, the most challenging thing to stitch either. We want something that's going to bring us some joy and peace. And right now, Antoinette's not doing that for me, so that's why she's not getting much love. But she got a little bit. So there is that. I worked next on a Quaker sampler that I've been showing you a lot. And it is called the Beatrix Potter Quaker sampler. Let me show you the chart. That's this one. Beatrix Potter Quaker. This is by Stitchy Box, and this also was a PDF download. I think you can get paper charts of this one, but this is the PDF and just a color photocopy of that. Oh, I thought of one thing I wanted to show you. Well, we have this one today. I am doing mine on 46 count linen, which I really enjoy stitching on, 46 count. I chose to do mine in Old Gold family of threads. I just pulled things out of my stash that all fit the same color family because I wasn't feeling the called for color. And that called for color actually is this one right here. It was a called for one in that Summer Sampler Fragment. It's DMC 356. That's what this was originally done with, is that color. You know, for some people that would sing to them. It wasn't singing to me. Something gold was. So that's why I chose these. So let me show you where I got since we saw each other last. What I got up to on her. So here is the Beatrix Potter sampler. You can see I made it all the way across the top. And where I've been since we saw each other last is in, get it folded down. These motifs right here on the screen. I'm gonna fold it a little bit more now. Maybe someday I'll get a board like some people have, like the pros have, and hang this on it, but I'm just wrangling my linen. I did all of these motifs, not this one, not that one, but I did this, 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 and this since we saw each other last. Let me get that up close. This one was a lot of fun right here. You can see I used a really variegated floss on that one. When I started sewing with that floss, it was WIPS whiskey, I think. Let me see. Yes, it was a WIPS whiskey. WIPS floss are very, of any of the overdyed floss, I think they're the most variegated. And I hadn't used that in the sampler yet. And quite honestly, I wasn't sure I was gonna like it because of how variegated it was, but I just kept going with it and ended up really liking it. Now, it may only show up one or two other places in the grand scheme of this particular sampler, but I liked it. So that's my progress on the Beatrix Potter Quaker. If you've been here before, you know I've sort of been talking about what I've been learning about Quaker motifs and Quaker samplers. There's different styles. The most common is this geometric, motif style that is most commonly recognizable as a Quaker, but there are some other styles of samplers that are Quakers as well. And but I've also been exploring the life of Beatrix Potter, who, by the way, did not stitch this. It was just part of her collection. And I got a new book about Beatrix again this week. So I want to tell you, like I said, this is 46 count linen, and the color is Moon Shadow, and that is by Seraphim. It's a beautiful creamy light neutral, and I'm using one floss thread over 2 linen threads, and I'm using everything from DMC to overdyed floss to overdyed silks on this. So I've got a variety of floss types, and I'm enjoying all of them. I've found that I particularly enjoy stitching with the overdyed silk. It's just beautiful floss. It slides so nicely through the holes of your fabric, and I love the way that it looks on the linen. So if I have an opportunity with it, which I think I will, to stitch with overdyed silks in the future, I'm definitely going to take it. I do have something kitted up that I showed you a few episodes back that all has overdyed silks in, and I've got a new chart that I just received that I'll do in overdyed silks as well. But let me show you the new book that I got this week, added to my book library. As soon as I put all this up. And that is this book right here, called At Home with Beatrix Potter. Trying to get the glare away. And this was recommended to me by one of my viewers and friends on Facebook named Heidi. She had this book and said, I think you would like this, Jackie. And she was right. I found this on the secondary market. It wasn't terribly expensive. That's what's been so great about all the books that I've acquired about Beatrix, is that they've all been available on the secondary market for, $10 or less. So I'm finding some good things to add to my library. But this is a book all about Beatrix's house and her gardens. And it has, of course, some of her amazing watercolors in it. But it again, includes some historical photograph references of Beatrix, like that right there, and talks about her journey to becoming an illustrator and her love of the Lake District, where she eventually moved to a house known as Hilltop House or Hilltop Cottage. I'm looking for a photograph. Surely there's an overview. I'll find it. Anyway, I've been really on a quest to find out more about that particular sampler, and have just not seen it other than in photographs from an traveling exhibition of Beatrix Potter's art and artifacts. And I was hoping it might be in this book. It's not. But I wanted to show you the room that I know it was in was her bedroom. And the quilt that she made that's on that bed is pretty famous too. But this is a photograph of her bedroom. Actually, that's not the quilt that's so famous in this particular picture, but there is one. This room just has this beautiful William Morris wallpaper. And the reason I know that that sampler was in her bedroom at one time is because of that wallpaper. One of you all who watch me sent me a photograph of the Beatrix Potter Quaker sampler hanging in that room. You saw it in that room. And that sampler was had that photograph that the viewer sent had that William Morris wallpaper in the background. So that's why I know at one time it's hung in that room. But in this particular book, there is a sampler shown on the wall right there, but it's not that Quaker sampler. So maybe when the Quaker sampler is traveling on exhibit at different places, they replace it with something else. And this book, the photographs for it were taken. It's just a lovely room, isn't it? Anyway, if you're at all interested in Beatrix or have gotten more interested in her based on me sharing more about her, look at the paintings. Just amazing art. Someday I'm going to get there to Hilltop Cottage. I know I am. I just got goosebumps when I said that, so I'm going to say that's a yes. The beautiful pictures here of her gardens too that were inspiration for a lot of her illustrations. Anyway, I would recommend this book, At Home with Beatrix Potter, where the lovely photographs and some more really interesting reading about Beatrix and what an amazing woman she was and what her contribution really to the Lake District, because she helped preserve a lot of that landscape. So her contribution to the world through more than just children's book illustrations had a great impact on England and all of us. So anyway, that's a great book, and I want to thank Heidi for recommending that, because I've enjoyed looking at it, and I know I'll continue to enjoy looking at it. I have found that as I work on the reproduction samplers that I work on, and they're primarily what I'm drawn to. You've seen other things already that are not reproduction samplers, but one of the things that I'm really drawn to about reproduction samplers is the connection to the past that they provide to us. They're, in many cases, girls or women who stitched the samplers that we're recreating, they had no particular agency in their time. They just didn't, and weren't landowners, although, you know, they came to be able to do a lot of things, but they just didn't have a lot of agency in their world. And so their samplers and needlework are some of the things, maybe the only things that remain about them. So I think about that a lot as I'm working on reproduction samplers, and that I'm really connecting to a person who made something. And I think that might also be one of those things that, as we're working on our stitching, and again, I reference that book, Psychology of Craft, that I want to talk about, is that we're going to leave something behind, something tangible, when we're not here, when we're leaving our stitching, whether it ends up in a Goodwill or a thrift store or as a family heirloom. We're still leaving something tangible behind, and it proves that we were here. It proves that we lived. It proves that we were somebody. And I think that's a great need for humans anyway. And so we're making these things of beauty, and we'll leave them for someone else to discover and wonder who we were and why are we stitching these things. And I think that's one of the fun things about FlossTube, is that as we are recording ourselves, it's like a visual diary of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And at least that's one of the reasons that I like doing FlossTube, is that it becomes a visual diary of my journey as I'm stitching, and what I'm learning about myself and others as I'm on this journey of stitching. It's become a lot more to me than just stitching samplers and making videos sharing you. It's become just so satisfying on a lot of levels to be able to sit and share this. But to know that, you know, the internet lasts forever, at least it has so far, and somebody may stumble on me talking about this stuff someday after I'm long gone, and maybe figure out, who was she? Why did she do these things? And maybe get a little bit more understanding of why I'm doing what I'm doing. The last thing I worked on was a sampler called the Julia Rachel de la Mare 1849 sampler. That's this one. It's by Cross Stitch Antiques. Kathleen Littleton has this sampler in her collection. Now this one is not widely available yet, but it will be released in August. I acquired it. It was part of a club that the Country Sampler in Spring Green, Wisconsin has called the Threads of History Club. And they had some extra kits after they mailed them out to their club members, and I was able to get one of those extra kits. I have since made a lot of changes to my kit. I think part of my kit, the only thing I'm using is this and a few of the called for threads. I've done a lot of changing, but I am using nearly the called for fabric. It did not come with the kit, but I was given a piece of it. Called for fabric is a mason linen that I know they're hard to come by, but the called for linen is 40 count button box medium dark by Mason Linen. And this piece of linen I got is 40 count. It was a special edition, but I've seen the button box medium dark and this one's very close to it, which is why I decided to use it. The fabric that came with the kit wasn't doing it for me, and so I restarted this. I started this actually the first time on my birthday at the end of September last year, and then I restarted it on February 25th of this year. So since we've seen each other last, I finished the central motif. So let me just show you. Whoops, I had it upside down. Let me show you. And I still am loving this sampler. So it continues to grow and become even more gorgeous with every stitch I take on it. And so when we were together last, I had just really had a start on this central motif. I think I had in these leaves right here and maybe these leaves down here, but I had that big one in, because I remember talking about changing a color in there and I wasn't sure it was going to work, but the more I kept with it, the more I think that it is. But I finished that whole thing since we've seen you last. So I'm just going to let you gaze on her beauty. You know, it's got some wacky colors in it that you wouldn't think would go together, but the more you stick with it, the more they do. So that's Julia Rachel de la Mare. And I'm really so glad that I changed the fabric, because I wasn't feeling, like I said, the fabric that I got in my kit. Nothing wrong with it. It was a beautiful linen. It just wasn't working for me. And once I started using this one and putting these colors on it, it really worked for me. I'm excited to work on it for a variety of reasons, which I'll talk more about. But this one is 40 count linen. Again, 1 floss thread over 2 linen threads. It's showing up nice there right now. And I'm going to show you all of the floss I've got here. And these are a combination of colors. I've got the called for ones here, as well as some additional ones. So it's the called for and more. And I'm doing that because I'm doing kind of not only my own conversion, but I'm not necessarily following the chart as far as what colors I'm using where. I mean, yeah, where it's calling for pink, I'm going to use a pink. But I've got an image of the sampler, the antique sampler, on my phone. And as I'm working in an area, I'm looking at the antique first and seeing, is the called for color, does that look to my eye like it's the one that should go there, or should it be something else? And so then if it should be something else, I'm changing it. Like this particular kind of grayish white flower here, those are not I don't think they're the called for colors at all. They're similar to them, but I think I totally pulled my own on that. So a few people have reached out to me to ask me for my color conversion. I don't feel like I should share it here with respect for Kathleen until the chart is more widely released. And as well, my conversion is not done. It's ever evolving. I'm changing up things, adding things. And so even if I were to give you my conversion today, there are things that could shift and change about it. But one of the things I will tell you I have done, and especially this popped into my head this morning, so that's why I'm going to talk about it here. There are a couple of colors that I'm using that I have tea dyed. And on my notes that I shared with people, I don't think I talked about the fact that I tea dyed these particular colors. One of them is a color called color and cotton color called Princess. This right here is it without tea dyeing. This is tea dyed but dark. Nope, it's coffee dyed. It gives a different look. That's coffee dyed. And this one that I'm using mostly is tea dyed. So you can see, here is it as it came off the skein. This one has some coffee with it. This one has some tea with it. And because I was looking for a very specific color, I dunked it for maybe 5 seconds and let it dry. Then maybe I dunked it for another 5 seconds and let it dry. I worked on the color gradually, dunking it until I got the color I wanted. And so that's one of them that I am using tea dyed. I'm fussy cutting a lot of them. Like this brown sugar is a called for color, but I am fussy cutting this skein to get the color of the floss out of it that I want. Here's the other one that I coffee dyed. The called for color is Brown Hen. I didn't think this was dark enough, or there was something about it, I can't quite now recall, that I didn't feel like this was the right color for my eye again, for what I wanted to achieve and what I'm working on. So I'm maybe using Brown Hen in some cases, but really not. I've replaced it with Classic Colorworks Little House Brown. And again, I have coffee dyed this one. And I made note of that on the tag. That's why I keep looking at the tag. This right here is the color as it came off the skein. It's a pinky brown. And then I added coffee to it to get it to be a little more brown, as you can see. So this is it off the skein. And this is it as I'm working on it. So I coffee dyed. And again, I did the same thing as I did with that pink. I dunked it just for a very brief amount of time in the coffee. And I added salt to my coffee to give it a little bit of stability. And let the thread dry. And then if it was the right color, great. If it wasn't, I dunked it for a little while longer, let it dry, checked it against my photograph. If it was okay, good, I was there. If it wasn't, I went back and did it more. So those are the two for sure I wanted to mention about the coffee dyeing. I've got a couple others in here that I did that too. I ended up not using, so it's not worth your time for me to go over them. But for those of you who asked and I shared what I've done so far with my conversion, I wanted to make sure you knew that I did some coffee dyeing. So if you're gonna get those colors and try and use them too, they need a little bit of aging added to them. So anyway, that one is the Julia Rachel de la Mare sampler. 40 count. This was a, whoops, upside down. Special edition Mason linen, but it does look very close to antique button box. Medium dark. one floss thread over 2 linen threads, and I'm still loving it. And looking forward to moving on. I think I'm going to go to, I've been looking at this thing, which one do I do next? And I think I'm going to do this bouquet right here next. There is quite a bit of color changing in this. For those of you who don't like color changing, this is a challenging sampler because it's based on some Berlin wool work, which uses a lot of little colors and stitches to get this sort of more painterly quality to it. For those of you who also do full coverage pieces, you're thinking, a lot of color changes? No, you don't know color changes until you've done a full coverage. And that would be my sister. One of my sisters works on Heaven and Earth designs, as well as samplers, but right now she's working on a enormous Heaven and Earth design sampler that's all these fancy colored books, fantasy books on a bookshelf. Oh my Lord, the changing of the colors to get what she's doing. That's not for me, but this is for me. So that's Julia Rachel de la Mare, 1849, by Cross Stitch Antiques, Kathleen Littleton. And that one, like I said, we know now, Kathleen mentioned recently that it would be released in August of this year. So for those of you who have been patiently waiting to work on her, your patience will soon be rewarded. So that is my stitching since we saw each other last. And I have now a few things to show you that I've acquired that I will share. First, a little bit of happy mail came from my friend Renee, who does not have a FlossTube, but a lot of people on FlossTube know her. And she is Prairie Stitcher 515 on Instagram. So you should follow Renee. She is a lovely, lovely person. I'm so pleased that I can call her friend now. But she sent me a little package. First of all, with this really cool card. This is by Birds of a Feather. I have no idea where she got it, but I'd love to find some. And she sent me some 46 count linen. She and her husband recently were traveling, and they detoured through St. Louis, and she went to the Color and Cotton store. So she got me a piece of 46 count linen. This is called Treasure Map. She said they really didn't have a lot of 46 count, but she picked up that for me. And then, because she knows I love a good gold color, she got this Color and Cotton one called Maze. And she was funny. She said, get that color away from that linen stat. She didn't say stat, but right away, because they don't go together. That was funny. Made me laugh. Anyway, thank you, Renee, for those. I will definitely find use for those. And I was mentioning that I have kind of a stash of Color and Cotton floss, and I got some more in to add to my stash. So I was going to show you those. First, kind of fanning them out, seeing if I can make them more pretty than they are. Look at these. Just some gorgeous colors. I have sort of been using a stash list that Mrs. Jones stitches. Channel Holly at Mrs. Jones kind of gave a list of what some good basic colors would be if you want to start building a Color and Cotton stash. Some of which I had, and some of which these are, but then I just look at their website, and if a color appeals to me, or if I've got a chart that I think, ooh, I could use that with that chart, then I add to it. And so that's why I got some of these colors. And this one I got, one called Galena. It's kind of a nice warm gray-black. But I grew up very near to Galena, Illinois, and Northwest Illinois. And so the name appealed to me. But I definitely know what I'm going to use this for, so that's why I got 2 skeins of that, because there's a Shakespeare's Peddler Quaker chart that I've shown you. Ragamuffin 2 is the name of it. It has some alphabets in it that the called for color was a black, and so I'm going to use this for those alphabets. They're going to be immediately put to use in a kit. When I'll start, I'm not sure, but those will go to that. So just some really pretty colors. Let me show you what they are. Let me tell you what they are. Get them off this little ring, just in case you're interested. This color, Heather, they didn't have a picture on their website when I chose it. It said coming soon. But if it's called Heather, you know it's going to be a beautiful purple. So I just went ahead and got it. Winterland, kind of a nice soft blue-green teal-ish. Moat, kind of a greeny gray. Moat. Tomato leaves, it's a yellowy green. That was one I know Holly Jones recommended, tomato leaves for a good green. Goldilocks, really nice gold. Gnome. I don't know why gnome was orange, but it's a nice orange. Ghoul. This is actually more of a greeny, light greeny brown. Tadpole. You know, they also have one called Polywog that's a very similar color. So I would imagine that, you know, maybe it was a dye lot that didn't quite work for Polywog, but it was a good color, so it became Tadpole in their range. Here's Dutch Tulip. This is a really nice warm red. Peace on Earth, a soft green. Laurel Wreath, it's a greeny brown. Pine Tree. Oxford Blue. Showing a little purple on here. It's not that purple. I think it's picking up from my shirt. Grinch. Not quite as green as I was expecting for the Grinch. It's a yellowy green. And then the Galena. So those are my color and cotton colors that I got. Lovely, lovely. I had mentioned last time I was showing you a project bag that I got from a gal named Sarah, who has a channel and an Etsy store called Penelope's Pocket. And I had mentioned that I had one coming from her that was stuck in customs. I got it within just a few days of my last video, so I want to show you that. It's this beautiful William Morris Strawberry Thief fabric. That's kind of the background is brown, but it has sort of a purpley cast to the brown. It is a gorgeous fabric. And Sarah used this pinky fern color on the inside. It's a lovely bag. I want to thank Sarah from Penelope's Pocket for that. And I also got, she does thread keeps with hers. I also got the thread keep with this one, the strawberry. I wanted that strawberry charm, particularly. And then she always sends a nice little, excuse me, handwritten card, Penelope's Pocket. But this one had this teeny little strawberry charm on it too. I want to get it so it shows. Look at that cute little strawberry charm. I know exactly where that's gonna go. So I think what I'm gonna put in this, I think I'm gonna put that Shakespeare's Peddler, the sampler fragments in this because of the dark linen I'm working on. I think they might go nicely into that, but I didn't put them in there because I wanted to show you this first. So there is that. Then I got a few charts. A friend of mine who lives here in Weston was down at the attic a few weeks ago for the Bristol to Berlin retreat. And I had ordered a couple of charts from the attic, and they hadn't mailed them out yet because it was right before Bristol. And my friend was overheard talking about where she was from, and the ladies behind the cash register said, "Do you know Jackie?" And she said, "Well, yeah." And they said, "We have some charts for her. Do you want to take them? Would you be okay taking them?" And she said, "Of course." So she brought me my charts from the attic. I got Jessie Challenor. Now, I know a lot of people have this one, have already stitched this one, and I am not one to stitch what everybody is stitching. I think maybe other than Julia, a lot of people are doing her. But I got to thinking about this one, and I really love the faded version, first of all. That's the one that I will most likely stitch, if and when I do. But I love Nicola's charts, don't get me wrong. I love the hats designs. And in fact, and I'll go back to this. The other one I got was this one right here that was just released, Magdalena Uthwaite. And I really love it from here down. And while I love the things that Nicola puts out, she uses mostly 103 silks or DMC, which are just, you know, one solid color. And I really love some variegation in floss. So I was thinking about all of this one day. I just think about stuff, you guys, my mind just like plays with things sometimes. So I was thinking one day, what is it that I like and don't like about hats charts? A lot of it is the fact that a lot of the older British charts are very symmetrical and formal. And if you look around me, I'm not symmetrical and formal. I like things that are balanced, but rarely completely symmetrical. And I really, right now, am enjoying variegated floss for the way it makes samplers look. And so I was thinking about Jessie Challenor, because this one's designed and stitched in 1904. I love this. This is a time period that it seems like the design and the needle arts and just decorative things are something that I really resonate with. But again, it's flat to me. And I was wondering, I wonder if anybody has yet, and it probably will be me, done an overdyed floss conversion for this. I made the mistake when I called to order this of asking if anybody had done an overdyed conversion to this yet. And they said, no, we only sell it in the kits, which I totally get. And I said, but I know Carolyn likes overdyed floss. And they said, no, this was Jean's favorite thing. We kitted it up like this. We will not be providing a conversion. And I really wasn't asking them particularly for a conversion. I just wondered if one had been done. And because I got to thinking about it, and I thought it might be interesting to do an overdyed floss conversion for Jessie. So that may be what I do. I like, you know, people have a hard time choosing, do they like the bright, do they like the more faded version? And so I think when I get around to this is just my thought process, I'm just letting you guys in on it, is that I would pull the DMCs for both versions and then just see what an overdyed conversion using those DMCs as inspiration might look like. So that's for the future. It's just something I'm thinking about. And because I got to know Jean a little bit, and I know that Jean was always a proponent of also stitch what you love and do it the way you want to do, as is Nicola. She very, very openly says, do it the way you want to do it. Have fun with it. It should be yours. Because the girls who originally stitched these were doing it because they were encouraged by their teachers or they were following their pattern books. But another girl in the same schoolroom might have done it slightly differently because she preferred different colors or stitched differently. And so Nicola always says, do it the way you want to do it. So I think I might do it the way I want to do it. So we'll see. In the future, you might see Jessie Challenor with a different kind of a floss conversion. And while my friend was there, I had asked her also to look for a couple of Samplers Not Forgotten charts that I was seeing on social media periodically. And I had also looked at their website too. So she brought this one back for me. This is called the LW 1821 Motif Sampler. Samplers Not Forgotten. And this is actually a fairly small sampler. On 36 count, it's the approximate finished size is just a little over 10 inches by 5.5. So that's tiny. So if you would go on a higher count, which of course is what I would stitch on, it's going to be a tiny little thing, which might be fun to add to your sampler collection or sampler wall, to have things of different sizes. And then the other one I was really looking for, but the attic didn't have it, is called the Black Cat 1861 sampler, also by Samplers Not Forgotten. So I did find it. That's this one. And this is, conversely, this is a really big sampler. So this one too is very hard to find, but I'll tell you where I did find it is a place called 3 Stitches in Spring, Texas. Now they had it on order when I was there, and I also had written to Kimberly Nugent of Samplers Not Forgotten to see where I might be able to find it, because I was having a hard time locating it online. And Kimberly said she was sending some to 3 Stitches and that they would let me know when they had it. So that's where I got this. If this is one you've been interested in, I see it every now and then. There's somebody on Instagram stitching this. And what I love about it, most of the samplers you see me work on have a lot going on in them. A lot of motifs. I love this part of this sampler. And of course, it has a Sacred Heart in it. So of course I'm gonna love that. There's a cross in it too, I think. I'm not seeing it right off. It has a cute chair. And this wonky horse, look at that. It's so funny. I love that. Anyway, this is really inspiring to me, this sampler. And I think it's one that I would redesign a little bit. Is this part right here is not so interesting to me. So I might just change the border, like take off some of the top, maybe come up with a different alphabet to put there, and just do a bit from my little finger down for this. And this one, the called for colors are all, there's one Gloriana, there's Belsois silks and NPIs on this. Its copyright date, oh, I can't see it right off. It's not on this particular, but it was put out quite a few years ago. And there's not even a DMC conversion for this. So I have ordered the Belsois silks, the particular Gloriana. I ordered those from, the Belsois from 123 Stitch. They were out of stock of the Gloriana color. The NPIs I can get from my friend Gretchen at Floraligium here in Weston, where I live. So I'm gonna pull those flosses together and then just see what might happen. But again, this was my opportunity. This is the one I had in mind when I was talking about overdyed silks. So that one again came from 3 Stitches in Spring, Texas. They also sent me this cute little, it's a chart. No, it's not a chart, but you could make that pretty easily. And they sent a needle for me too. So I want to thank the ladies at 3 Stitches for getting that sampler chart for me. That one is one that I will have fun doing at some time in the future. And then lastly, what I have been having fun with is I have found, finally gotten a travel stitching case. I know that's been a big trend for the last, year and a half or so, that people get those traveling jewelry cases and redesign the insides and put all sorts of cool stuff in them. And I hadn't thought that was something that I might want to do until I saw this one. This is a Winterberry case. You know, this first came out, I think it was a Hobby House exclusive. It came as a part of a holiday box that they had, which was sold out by the time it came across my radar. And then for a while, Hobby House had this, and I almost bought it like 2 or 3 times. Then I didn't. I thought, no, it's kind of expensive. You know, when am I going to use that? But I have such a love for Scotland that I just kept being drawn to this. I think it's probably a Stuart tartan. Anyway, I almost bought it right before the Hobby House retreat that Brenda and Laura were at with Plum Street and Heartstring Samplery. And then, of course, it was sold out again. And I kicked myself for not getting it. But then I had the opportunity one last time to get it. And I thought, well, I better do it. So I got myself one. So this is it. And I'm already having fun deciding what I'm going to do on the inside. So I haven't done a lot yet, but I'm just going to pull it open and show you what's inspiring me and what's eventually going to be in here. Ta-da! So, you know, I have a Scottish Terrier. I have had an Airedale Terrier. I've had a Wheaton-colored Scottish Terrier. So I got all my little terrier charms. I just thought it was going to be an ode to Scotland in here. So I got a puffin. This right now is one of those pins, but I'm going to make it into a needle minder. I love puffins. So that's, I've got in here. I've got one of these sheep thread bobbins from Heartstring Samplery. This is the only one I could find. If I can find another one, I will get it, but that's in here. I found on Etsy, I did a lot of Etsy shopping, and I found this bookmark. It had this tassel with it. It was a bookmark. It's a felt bookmark that has some machine embroidery, this Scottish thistle. But I've made it already into a needle book. Looky here. It is now a little needle book for my box. All I did was fold it up in thirds. I was just playing with it one day thinking, how can I make this into a needle book? And I just started playing with it and it folded naturally. So my little teeny weeny colonial size 28 petite needles fit in here. I sewed a snap where the button was that used to hold that, anchor that gold tassel, and the point just comes up and snaps. And then I've got my Scottish thistle needle book. So that's going in here. I was very torn about scissors to put in here because when this box was sold, it was sold with a pair of red tartan scissors. Hobby House didn't have any of those when I was looking. I found them another couple of places, and there were a couple of other colors. I almost bought the scissors, but I was torn between them and these. Can you see those? It's a it is a rabbit pair of scissors. Kind of like the storks, but a rabbit. So I ended up getting the rabbit because, of course, there are rabbits in Scotland. I got this antique bone awl. I found that on Etsy. I had this little... I have a lot of Scotty little things that I've acquired over the years, jewelry and charms and things. This little wooden one. I had these red and white plastic ones that are on a chain. These Bakelite Airedales that's on a pin. This is a piece of jewelry that a friend made me. This is the other Scotty I had before Archie. Her name was Bonnie Rose. And then I found this Wheaton colored Scotty charm, which is, the coloration of this is just like Bonnie Rose was. She had a reddish back and blonde legs. I don't know which of those are going to end up being in here and what configuration. I thought about making them fobs for these zipper pulls, but one of my sisters, I was talking to her about it, and she said, oh, they might get damaged there. What about putting them on a length of ribbon and just tying them up here to the top? So I don't know, we'll see. But I just collected all my fun little Scotty things together. I've got more, but those were the ones that seemed like they would go here. I also have these, I don't know if you can see, these are a couple of buttons that are just tied together, but they are, back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, I think, there was a lot of like bookends and tie racks that were these three-dimensional. It kind of looks like wood, but it's some like version of plastic or wood pulp that's like plastic. Anyway, for a long time I've had these two Scotty buttons. I'm gonna see if putting a magnet on the back of this, if this can become a needle minder. If not, I might just somehow affix it in here. And so that's the stuff that's in the tray right now. And then this tray comes out, and then you've got the whole bottom of the box, which I've got other stuff in right now. So this right here, this piece of silk, is actually part of an antique quilt that my friend Gretchen at Florilegium gave me. I was down in her shop one time. This was inspired by a crazy quilt that she and her husband Fred have hanging on the wall in their shop. If you've been in there, it's behind the cash register, to the side of the cash register. It also shows up in the video that I made of Florilegium if you want to see it. It's a beautiful antique crazy quilt. But I was down talking to Gretchen one day, and I was looking at that quilt, and I said, hey, you wouldn't have any cutter pieces or damaged pieces of a crazy quilt, would you? And she said, well, yeah, I actually do. Why do you ask? And I said, well, I got this box, and I was thinking that it needed a pincushion in the bottom. And she said, well, let me bring it in and I'll show you. So this is just a fragment of a silk crazy quilt that has not been or silk patchwork, because these are all patches that are sewn together. But I'm going to make it into a pincushion that will go into that center part. Now it's not going to be, I'm probably going to make it smaller than this full section. It's not going to be affixed in there. It will come out. And then last week I was down with Gretchen, and she was showing me a few crazy quilt embroidery stitches. So this is just my little test piece. I don't know if you'll be able to see that. Anyway, we did feather stitch, some chain stitch embellished with some beads, and some bullion knots, and there's just some herringbone. This was all just play, so I could learn those stitches. I've embroidered before, but it's been a long time, and so she was giving me a crash course. And eventually I'm gonna embellish this piece of silk patchwork with some stitches. And then whenever I've seen crazy quilts, there are a lot of them that have velvet, like were probably millinery flowers. They've been appliqued onto the quilt with, and use like satin stitch or buttonhole stitch to apply them to the surface of the crazy quilt block. And I'm always drawn to pansies, and which is why I have those pansies right there. This is a vintage millinery flowers. I found those on Etsy too. So I'm going to take one of those. I don't think you will even miss it, and apply it to my crazy quilt piece. I also have a couple of cards in here. I just slipped in here a couple of cards that I like. Whether they'll stay or not, I don't know. Anyway, one of those pansies is going to be used with my crazy quilt piece. The colors all go so well. And then I always have a Sacred Heart put in. That was a, what do you call those things? The name escapes me. But those, little prayer. I think this is a Sacred Heart of Jesus here and the Flaming Heart there. So that's going to go in there too, because I always have one of those in there. So anyway, that's my fun box. I'm having fun thinking about what might go in it, how I want to decorate it. Everybody's putting their animal crackers in them. Maybe one day an animal cracker will go in here. But it's been fun collecting little bits and pieces and thinking about what I'm going to put in my box. So that's what I've been playing with since we saw each other last. It's been fun staying inspired, and especially as things around us stay and maybe become more challenging, which is why when the book Craft Psychology came onto my radar, I was so intrigued by it. You know that I like to know the why, what motivates people to stitch the things that they do. That's part of what is interesting to me. Particularly about me, I do a lot of self-reflection and reflecting on why am I stitching the things I am. I've talked about some of that already today. But a few weeks ago, actually, one of you guys reached out to me on Instagram to share with me an article that they had seen, that you had seen, in the Embroiderers Guild of America Needle Arts magazine. And it was this article, The Psychology Behind Stitching and Good Mental Health. And it was the first time that this book, Craft Psychology, came onto my radar. And I didn't talk about it at the time because I was doing my 1-year anniversary FlossTube, the Q&A, blah, blah, blah. I had a lot of content, so I just held it back because I felt like someday I'll talk about it. And then this past week, it came on my radar again. I like to watch Gary Sligh, who has a FlossTube called The Legacy of Handmade Objects. I love Gary's channel because he talks a lot about why we're doing the things that we're doing and what an impact and the legacy that they leave is. And Gary had recently been introduced to this book, Craft Psychology. And I'm going to put a color copy of the cover of the book up here so you can see it. It's written by a Dutch psychologist, researcher named Dr. Anne Kirketerp. And this, I don't have the book yet. I think I'm going to get the audio version of the book. But I listened to part of a webinar that she gave. I listened to it on YouTube, and I listened to an interview that she gave that was also on YouTube. And I just really found her research so interesting and so helpful, especially why we're drawn to stitching. We know that it helps to calm us, but why? And Anne has done a lot of research to find out why. And as well, anybody else can tell you, you know, and I've talked about it, it's very meditative, it makes you present. If you're counting, you have to focus in order to count. And so there's that, the obvious thing. There's obviously the excitement we get when we're getting ready to start something new. We get a dopamine hit, or when we're at a store and we're buying new things, we get a dopamine hit. That makes us feel good. And then the stitching of the sampler or the project and bringing it to life make us feel good too. But it was when I heard Dr. Kirketerp talking about some of the things that through her research that she was finding that were so meaningful about working on crafts, not just stitching. She's a knitter, not necessarily a stitcher. I just realized that there's a whole lot more going on for us when we are making things, or no matter what that might be, that really promotes mental health and our overall sense of well-being. So I, of course, went down my rabbit holes like I like to do, and got some more information. Just a few things that I want to tell you about. Obviously, it has been documented that working on crafts reduces stress and lowers blood pressure, reduces depression and anxiety, alleviates mental illnesses such as anorexia and schizophrenia, as well as addiction. It diverts our focus from chronic pain and illness, strengthens muscular mobility, increases well-being, joy of life and the feeling of being useful, as well as giving us satisfaction from achieving something that will create value or be of value for others. Reduces loneliness and social isolation. So even though we might be doing our crafts by ourselves, we also get together with others in order to do those crafts. And through this medium of YouTube and other social media, we don't feel so isolated. It slows, working on crafts slows early stages of dementia. We're using our brains. We're continually using those parts of us that might otherwise atrophy and be problematic because it stimulates neuroplasticity in our brains. It's hand-eye coordination when we're stitching or when we're doing anything. And she said one of actually the most healthful things you can do for your brain is to think of something in here, you know, create an image of something and then bring that to fruition. There's just so much satisfaction that comes from having the thought, creating the thing, gathering the pieces and bits, and then doing the thing. Whether that's whittling, and that came up in a conversation in an interview she was giving, talking to a gentleman and his wife who were researchers and both psychologists. And the gentleman was talking about how much satisfaction he was getting out of whittling some little wooden spoons, and he just hadn't ever felt that before. And she was saying, you know, you see that in your head, and you start with this block of wood, and with each little chip away of that block of wood, you're bringing a spoon into form. It's one of the best things you can do for yourself. Not whittling spoons, but think of a thing, then start to bring it to life. I just loved everything that she had to say, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from her, because it also helped me. I was having light bulb moments all over the place as I was listening to her, because I actually was thinking about how I was using some of what she was talking about in my daily life at work. And we have had a really stressful week at the bank that I work at. We're short-staffed. We've lost a couple of employees, and we had another one out on vacation this week. And you need a certain amount of bodies there to do the things that need to be done. And at any job of work that you do, you need certain people to be able to do all of the stuff that needs to be done to keep a business going. And so we were short some bodies for some of the things, and we had to scramble to get people. There's a lot of stuff in a bank. I know you don't know this, but it has to be under dual control. You don't want to be stealing anything. You need somebody else with you to verify that these things are counted in the way that they are and that you're doing it the way that you're supposed to be doing it. Sometimes you didn't have that second person for the dual control. But anyway, it can get very chaotic and stressful at the bank. And I realized that sometimes during the day, I find such relief in just counting the money in my drawer and getting my drawer in balance. You're taking in deposits, you're getting a lot of pieces of paper. Money becomes paper when you work with it all day. I hate to say it, but it has value, yes, but it's also just paper. And when you've got your drawer full of it, it's folded, it's upside down, it's not facing the right way, just for me, bringing order to that, ordering it, counting it, bundling it up in the way that we do at a bank, I find such relief in that. And I realized it was for one of the reasons that Dr. Kirketerp was talking about, because I have to focus to count. I'm counting, and I have to focus to do it. So when I work on counting the money in my drawer at the bank during the day, I'm having a moment of stress reduction. So I'm appreciative of that in a much deeper way now when I have to do that. And it also, listening to her was helping me understand maybe why. Well, first of all, I want to tell you, one of the main things I learned from her is we got justification for having more than one project going on at a time. She said it's great to have up to 10 things going at a time or more, but she said she has at least 10 projects that she's working on. She's a knitter. I'm not sure what else she does. She has been a teacher of craft before. In her country, they have a folk school, and she was a teacher there for some years. And so she is also like a professional craft person in her country, and then a psychologist and a researcher. And so she was talking about how it's important to have more projects, and they should each be different levels of complexity, because sometimes your brain just can't handle a really complex thing. It needs something simpler to work on. And sometimes your brain wants to, and you have the energy to work on something very complex. So it's good to have a range of things. So as an example, just with the stuff I've shown you today, the monochromatic things, the Quaker sampler or the Antoinette, the red sampler, those are, my brain doesn't need to have to, although Beatrix Potter, Quaker, I do have to choose a color, but I am in a limited palette. The Antoinette one, the color's already chosen, the red. It's going to be the same through the whole chart. I'm frustrated with it because of the knots. If it wasn't for that, I would be coming home probably picking that one up more, because again, it's been stressful at work. So when I come home, I want to stitch on something that's not going to be as stressful or need a lot of my brain power to solve problems or switching of colors. But the other things that I have worked on so far that I've felt like I've been the most engaged with, and now have a deeper understanding of why they have engaged me so much, because they have been creative projects for me, like the Consider the Lilies sampler that I did. You saw that in one of my very first videos. It's on the wall right over here. I redesigned that whole thing, basically. I kept the general framework, a lot of the motifs, but I changed a lot of them too to have meaning to me. I didn't know I was all the levels of why it was so satisfying for me to do that project at the time, but I understand it more now. Why I was so engaged with that, because I was putting so much of myself into it, and why it was really a monogamous stitch for me, and I never ever got bored with it, because I was consistently working on my version of it and selecting some colors and changing some motifs as I went along. I had the bulk of that thing redesigned before I ever started stitching, but it evolved as I went through that whole project, and it kept me engaged and not bored at all as I was doing it. I hear people talk about getting bored with their stitching projects, and I think, how do you do that? I don't get bored at all with what I'm doing, but it's because I've got a variety of things I can work on, but for the most part, my brain is really engaged by the things that I've chosen to work on. And I did that all unconsciously. I just have different understanding of it now, having listened to Dr. Kirketerp. And so I went from Consider the Lilies to, I was just thinking about which projects have kept me the most engaged, that I've gotten the most out of. So I went from Consider the Lilies to the Bridget Power sampler. And initially I was drawn to the design of it for a variety of reasons, which I've talked about. And then I got very involved and invested in Bridget herself and who she was, what motivated her to make that sampler. Where did she live? Nothing was known about her. And so learning more about the sampler as I journeyed through it kept me invested in that. And I got so much more out of it. And I think you all did, because you've shared with me from the time I started to the time I was finished with that, we all went on a really interesting journey. And so then I went from that to the Julia sampler, and I got the kit. I was going to use the kit. I was excited about it. And then my excitement for it quickly waned. And it was for a variety of reasons, which I had to think about. I had to spend some time reflecting on what is it about this that's not working for me. The fabric changed a lot of my level of interest in it. And then when I realized I needed to make it look more like a version of the antique that I had in a photograph on my phone, then I became really into it again. And I hope that comes across when I share it. I'm just really into that one. And it's because even though the design is in front of me on the chart, I'm making it my own as I go along. And I'm invested in each of those little areas and making them look like the antique. It's something that my brain just wants to do. I am really enjoying it. And so I look at a motif, I look at the antique, I pull the thread that's called for. To me, does it match? And I realize I'm matching a picture on my phone, which the color correction on the screen might not be like it looks when you look at a picture of that antique on the phone. But it's mine, it's the one I have, and that's the one I'm going for. If the thread matches, great, I'll use it. If it doesn't, which other one works better? And I'm okay trying other ones. If I have to dunk something in coffee or tea to make it look like the picture on the phone, that's exciting for me. I want to make it look like that. It's really enriching the making. It's enriching the process of the making of that particular sampler for me. So, and the others that I'm doing, I just did a color conversion on that Shakespeare's Peddler. That's fun for me. I spent probably an hour and a half to 2 hours auditioning colors for that last Sunday morning. Time flew when I was doing that. And that's what Dr. Kirketerp is talking about. When we are working on something that has our whole brain invested, we get into that flow state, and that feels really good. We like doing that. And sometimes we don't want to have to work our brains. We want to just sit down and look at our chart, have the colors provided for us. Not everybody is into the things that I am about changing the stuff or feels like they have the confidence or the ability to do that. You'll find what works for you, what lights you up about the projects that you're working on. But what lights me up about them is making them my own. And if that's changing a color or making a conversion or redesigning something like I was talking about with that black cat sampler, that's fun for me. It's just, so we choose the things we do because they're going to be fun for us. We are put something out into our work and we're receiving something back from it. Whether it's just counting and calming and just de-stressing from a busy day or the cares of the world. That's why stitching and talking about it right now is actually still important. Because I wrestle with that. Is just sitting in front of you talking about this still important? And I would say, yeah, it is. And so I'm going to wind down now. And I think, yeah, it is for a couple of reasons. Because it was so easy to get drawn into despair right now. And if you're affected by the floods, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Or if you're just an observer of a lot of the things that are going on in the world, like I am, it's so easy to get drawn into the pain and the outrage and all of it. And that's paralyzing. I mean, for a moment there, I couldn't speak, but because that's paralyzing if you get drawn into it. But being paralyzed is not helpful. We need forward movement, and we still need to do the things that help us move through our own lives. Because eventually, life is not going to be as challenging as we find it to be right now. So we have to keep going. And as Mr. Rogers said, look for the helpers. Today I'm a helper, just by bringing this up. But the other thing I want to add to that is actually two things. I've talked to you before about Carolyn Mace and that I have followed her work for a long time. Her work has evolved over the years since I've been following her, but she's always been a spiritual teacher for me. And back in the early 90s was the so-called, New Age. There were a lot of New Age books, New Age thought, all sorts of, it was New Age. And a lot of people who were reading and listening and participating in that whole movement. It was kind of the first time, maybe in a long time, or that we were encouraged to, follow your bliss, do what you love, the money will come, blah, blah, blah. And that's not always true. I've tried that. I followed my bliss. I have been a professional artist. It worked for me for a while, and until it didn't. And again, you add doing art for a living to it. And again, Dr. Kirketerp, I'll reference her. She said, once you start monetizing stuff, it sort of pollutes your joy of just doing the thing. So she just was cautioning people who were maybe thinking of monetizing their hobby to know why you're doing what you're doing, and that it could change the way you think about your hobby. So hobbies are just meant to be that, a hobby. Something that you can sit down and find joy in, and you don't have to worry about, is it going to put food on your table or anything like that. It's just something that you find joy doing. But anyway, Carolyn was talking one day about how the whole idea of finding your purpose, following your bliss, or what is my purpose, that for a while that was stressing people out to figure out what's my purpose. Like it needed to be some grand thing, leading a movement, creating a foundation, doing a big thing, that was stressing people out if they couldn't figure that out. And because that's what she was observing, is that people were having a hard time figuring out what their purpose was. And she said something that really hit me as very profound at the time. She said, what if your purpose is to just live where you do, like the end of your cul-de-sac or near the end of Main Street in Weston, Missouri, my words, and shine your unique light just in the way that you do it? What if that is your purpose? Could you do that? And when she said that, I thought, oh, yeah, I can do that. And that was many years ago that I heard her say that, but it has stuck with me ever since. I was like, it's important that I just be who I am, shining my particular wattage of light, because I am where I'm meant to be for now, where I'm meant to be doing what I'm meant to be doing, shining my little wattage of light. Because you never know who that's going to affect. You never know if you're going to be the person who smiles at somebody who's having a bad time today, and you're the one who changed their day. Just by being who you are and shining your wattage of light, continuing to do whatever you need to do to cultivate, finding and keeping, maintaining your light. And then last week I heard, just the last thing I'm going to leave you with, I heard somebody that I follow on social media. It was just like a reel or a little short video that I saw, as another kind of spiritual teacher type person. He said, you know how a lot of times we go through life, we're always outward looking for a sign that, might direct us to the next thing. We're always looking for a sign. He said, what if you're the sign? What if you're the sign? You showing up to your job or for your family or wherever it is. What if you're the sign for someone else? It kind of gives purpose for the day. What if I'm somebody's sign? And I actually had that happen. I knew it one day. And it hit me that day. I was like, I'm the sign for this person today. A lady came into the bank. She was really frazzled. She had forgotten her password for her online banking. No matter what, and then she got locked out of her online banking. Could I help her figure that out? So I did. But it could tell she was really frazzled. Something was on her mind. She was kind of scattered. And she left the bank, but she left her phone. And so I ran out she was still in the parking lot. I ran out to the car and handed her her phone. And she was so relieved. She hadn't yet realized that it was gone. She said, oh my gosh, I just have so much on my mind. And I said, I knew that. I can tell. I said, you've got a lot going on right now. And when I said that to her, she realized she was being seen because tears came to her eyes. She was being seen in that particular moment. Somebody acknowledged, I acknowledged to her that I saw that she was having a hard time. And I just said to her, by acknowledging she was having a hard time, she was getting that I saw her. But I said, you know, I used to be a yoga teacher, and one of the first things that I always tell people, especially when they're frazzled, is to feel your feet on the ground and to please take a deep breath. She did it as I said the words, and she goes, thank you. Thank you. And she went back to her car and went about her day. But I had the knowledge. At that moment, I got goosebumps, and I said, I was her sign today. I hardly can get through a video without crying a little bit. So maybe I'm your sign today. I ask you to be a sign for somebody else. And our stitching is important to help us do that. To help us be our little version of light. So thank you so much for listening and for sharing and for being with me today. I really do appreciate you. And thank you. I'll see you again probably in about 3 weeks. So go forward with your purpose. Stitch what you want. All of the WIPS that you want to stitch, because they all matter to your well-being and to what you can put out in the world. And my thoughts go out to anybody who is in pain today, or who is afraid, or who just needs to know you're seen. I see you. I see you. So thank you, everybody. Namaste.